Let me start, Larry, with the drama, maybe soap opera of the stimulus bill. On again, off again, sometimes in the same day. We had President Trump saying, I'm walking away from the table, I don't want to talk about it. We had Nancy Pelosi tell us here at Bloomberg, I'm not doing it unless it's a big deal. And then at the very end of the week, President Trump came back and said, no, I want to do more stimulus than anybody. I want to do more than Nancy Pelosi. But in the end, do we need it?
David, we do need it. It's very clear that it's the right thing to do. Look, doing without stimulus at a moment like this is kind of like wading into a crowd not wearing a mask in the era of COVID. It might turn out just to have been a mistake for which you didn't pay a price, but very likely it will be a mistake for which you will pay a very big price. There are all kinds of signs that the fast bounce back that the economy was enjoying isn't going to continue of its own devices. COVID's getting further out of control as we move to winter. Financial strains are increasing and interfering with the flow of credit. Layoffs, which people hope to avoid, they're bowing to necessity and laying people off. The situation globally is complex at best. Stimulus is recovery insurance, and nothing is more important than maximizing the prospect that the recovery continues.
So, Larry, given that, the markets were up. The S&P was up the most since July this past week, and it's had 2 weeks up in a row. Are the markets basically saying we're going to get the stimulus sooner or later no matter what because we think maybe Joe Biden's going to end up being president?
If you look at the internals of the market, there are signs in that direction. The companies, for example, those involved in green technology that are thought most likely to benefit from the kind of recovery program he would propose, are up disproportionately relative to other companies, such as those in very brown industries, where there's a sense that the company depends more on the Trump administration. So I think the expectation of Biden's stimulus is an important part of it. The expectation that if the economy starts to melt down, the Fed will have to go into more rescue. And the Fed's rescue tricks are basically about credit, and that benefits stocks much more than it benefits workers. And so some of it's a bet that we're going to have to rely on that. But anyone who said the stock market's up, therefore everything's okay, is a fool. And you saw that this week when there were moments when it looked like we weren't going to get stimulus now and we weren't going to get stimulus soon. Those were the moments when the market was weakest.
Yeah, and Larry, I have to give you credit here. On this program earlier, some time ago, you said the chances were larger, or there'd be a blue wave, that is to say the Senate would go Democrat as well as the president. Those were a larger set of odds than actually the possibility of Donald Trump getting reelected. But let's go to the other big risk out there, which is COVID-19, which we see rising once again in the United States. You say we need stimulus for the economy. What do we need to battle COVID-19?
We need to do the things that the rest of the world has figured out to do. You know, it's amazing. I had occasion to see the statistics on Pakistan. Pakistan's not a country that's known for its competence and aptitude in getting things done effectively, but they are doing much better than we are in terms of containing COVID. Some of this is a broad cultural thing that in America we focus more on private health, and we'd be well advised to focus much more on public health in all of its various dimensions, like preventive medicine, like investing in socioeconomically depressed populations. That's a part of it. But the other part of it is raw, unadulterated incompetence in rolling out tests, in encouraging people to do dangerous things, in leaders role modeling cataclysmically bad habits. I mean, let's be clear. In the same way that everyone knows that you tell your kid not to drive when they're inebriated. You don't go looking for COVID by wading into crowds at potential super spreading events with no masks. And we are reaping what the President of the United States has sown here, and it is inexcusable. And there's more people that, there are more people than died in the Vietnam War and every war since who would not have died if we had managed to function at an average level of competence, not a high level of competence, an average level of incompetence for industrialized countries.
So, Larry, we always want to conclude with a lightning round here of a few things. Let's figure out who got too much this week.
We're pointing towards the airlines getting too much. We do need to keep the planes flying, but there's no reason why we need to keep the stock prices of the airlines up, and there's no reason why people who bet on airline bonds and airline credit earning a 7% spread because it might be risky, they should take the consequences and not get paid back in full as part of any bailout. And there's a bipartisan error being made on that.
Okay, so if the airlines are getting too much, who's in risk of getting too little right now? Who's getting shortchanged in the economy?
Women. Everything about the COVID recession is particularly burdensome for women. You've seen the female unemployment rate go above the male unemployment rate for the first time in a very long time. You see it in what people with careers are experiencing, because it's women who are disproportionately bearing the burden of kids who are still at home. And that's a very costly thing for our country's future. The successful assimilation of women into the labor force over the last decades has been an important thing that has driven our economy forwards. And if that stops, that's going to matter long after we've somehow put COVID behind us.
Larry, we're seeing a lot of contests, certainly in the United States of America and around the world. We have a presidential contest going on. We saw that vice presidential debate earlier this week. So in all these contests, who's winning at this point?
Authoritarians, perhaps Xi Jinping. Look, American democracy in the UK, democracy in Brazil, democracy just isn't looking like it can keep people secure. The central challenge going forward is making sure that government by the people also actually is government for the people. And when you see things like our incompetence in dealing with COVID, when you see the magnitude of the way leaders in the United States, and not only in the United States, are pitting one group in the population against another group in the population, when you see the magnitude of the differentials that are arising between rich and poor, 10 years of life expectancy, the equivalent of 3 times the total burden of cancer, when you see all of that, it's got to be something that makes our adversaries who believe in authoritarian systems feel like their example is managing to win out over ours. And going back to John Quincy Adams, to George Kennan's strategy for winning the Cold War, to the most thoughtful diagnoses of why the Berlin Wall came down, it has come down much less to the power of our arms than the power of our example. And our example is in more tawdry disarray than certainly any time in my lifetime.